Kamal, thank you so much for being here today. I know it's very early for you in the morning there and getting pretty late here, my time zone. Yeah, man,
Good.
I'm super excited. I'm looking forward to having this. I think I told you before, we just shot a episode on Singapore, on kind of the history and Lee Kuan Yew and, how quickly he was able to change. And it's so surprising to me. It's almost like Singapore is a startup of a nation. And it just changed so fast from like a swamp to now one of the most economically powerful, countries. And so I'll stop rambling. I want to hear about you. Please introduce yourself. Please tell us, where you're from originally, if you grew up in Singapore, university, and how you kind of got into entrepreneurship.
Yep. Well, thanks, Grant, for giving the time and the opportunity as well. My name is Kamal. I grew up in India. I kind of born in Delhi. At the age of 17, I pretty much moved out of home. I did my computer science engineering degree out there. And from there, I went on to do my master's degree in the UK. At that point of time, it was called machine learning, which people now call as AI. So, I've been like an AI master way back since early 2000s, both in terms of supervised learning and unsupervised learning. That's been my core forte as well. I travel a bit of traveling all over the world, keeping my base as the Europe and Switzerland, Germany, Belgium, working for Nike, Microsoft as well. And from there on to the US with Fidelity Investments. Did a couple of years of stint there, and finally, because of family pressure and all, I had to move back to Asia. So early 2004, 2005 is when I moved back because my dad wasn't keeping well. Sadly, he couldn't survive, and I kind of moved my base to Singapore. I've been here since then. The reason why I still stick around Singapore, obviously, it's its vibrancy. And even though it's a small country, yet it's a very, very, very unique country in itself. It gives you so many opportunities to kind of try out new things. Everything is very well controlled. While they call it the fine city from a different perspective, but yet it's actually a very fine city.
We got to talk to, when I did my research, on what's happening in Singapore, the education system from what we here have, elementary, middle school, high school, before college, it is very structured, very take your tests, pass those, you can go to university. But when we got to talk to Kia Yang from Hawaii a few weeks ago, she was talking about her travels, and apparently there's now programs in Singapore where you can, I think it's every startup founder at the universities gets a $10,000 grant so they can do their venture.
Correct. So the government and a lot of other government bodies as well, the Startup Singapore and all the other things, it gives you a lot of opportunities to try out and venture into different things as well. Nice. Even though I was not a Singaporean at one point of time as well, so when I applied for some startup way back March before COVID, 2016 or 15 as well, I could get a grant as well. So
really?
To try out yes. So that's the beauty about this country as well. It lets you try out new things. If they see that there's a value addition in there, they will give you a chance.
And that's government sponsored.
Yes, that was a government sponsor, and since since it's a government and everything is kind of controlled environment in that sense, so you try, you let you venture, and yet there's a supporting ecosystem as well that helps you manage and grow.
Nice, I love it, man. I want to bring it back to you and kind of your story leading up to it. When you were traveling around from India to Europe to the US to back, were you working in entrepreneurial companies, or
No.
How did you get into entrepreneurship? Because now you're a founder. So how did you make that transition?
So I've always been in the corporate sector, right? So like I said, I started off my journey with Credit Suisse, private banking. I was there, data modeling, reporting, BI specialist as well. From there on, I moved on to Nike, as I said, to developing to Microsoft, developing their LMS, learning management system. And from there to Fidelity, building their securities exchange program. So, always been a techie at heart, and all the big corps as well. So I reckon it's more of the family blood So if you see my last name is Shivdasani. Shivdasanis are like Sindhis, and Sindhis are true businessmen at heart. So it's the entire the genre of the gene itself is like they run their own businesses, but none in my family have been an entrepreneur and thing. But I think it was just there. So that's exactly, I think, over the course of while working for all these big corps, I always wanted to venture out and try out new things. Tried some, failed some, before finally, we kind of worked on this Labamu.
It's funny you mentioned the, it's in your genes. I heard a theory once that the reason why America is so full of entrepreneurship is the people who were crazy enough to ride the boats over like the first few waves and like settle in the U.S. before it had anybody. When it was very sparsely populated, they took the entrepreneurial gene with them. Like they were crazy enough to go and try it. So they started up a whole country. But talk to me about, I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Is it Labamu or Labamu?
Labamu, 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 which basically means your profits.
What was that?
And your profits.
New profits.
Your profits. So
Your
Labha,
profit.
so
Gotcha.
Labha actually, so Labha basically is like a Hindi word or a Sanskrit word as well. Labha means profit, and Mu is like yours. So your profit.
I like it.
And our tagline is Tumbu Barsama, which basically means growing together.
Nice. All right, tell me the origin story, man. I'm always interested in most founders who start something like this. It's, I faced this problem myself and I said, well, nobody else is solving it, so I guess I have to. So give me the origin story. How did this start? How long ago? And how have you gotten to right now?
Yeah, so I think the original set of idea came, when I was working along with my other co-founder, Emmanuel. He's an Aussie, he's a Tassie boy. So we've been working together at Standard Chartered Bank for almost over a decade, 12, 14 years. We were together in different parts of the bank as well. Wholesale banking to corporate to retail to private banking as well, a couple of years. And one thing which we observed while being at the Standard Chartered itself was the banks cannot serve the SME segment. So if you see an SME is like a small, medium, micro, like a roadside stall, a mom-and-pop shop as well, to mid to small SMEs as well. So today, the banks, that entire segment, which pretty much is about 40 to 60% of a GDP of a country, of most of the countries as well, especially in the developing nations, and they are not served by the financial institutions. The banks cannot serve them. Why? Simply a couple of reasons. That's how basically they operate, right? So they don't do KYC. Their books are never managed. Half of them run off like cash and whatnot, right? So that's exactly the reason why we would see all these NBFCs, money lending, and all the other smaller illegal things they kind of start up. So banks still cannot technically serve the SMEs such as a whole, micro SMEs and especially. And that's actually where we started off the idea of Labamu. Being working in the bank. So to give you a broad background, Labamu is a CVC. So while working in the bank, the bank itself had a program called the entrepreneurship as well. So we, as the employees of Labamu, employees of Standard Chartered, pitched the idea to a vertical called SC Ventures, which is another vertical or a CVC of the bank.
Real quick, CVC, what is that?
Corporate venture. It's a corporate venture. So firm as well. So SC Ventures, if you could look it up as well. So we pitched the idea to SC Ventures saying that, we want to help the broader community as well, right? Obviously, the bank as such had the SME segment, the retail segment, the business banking segment, yet they were not able to tap onto them fully, not able to give them the full spectrum of services that they would offer. That's when the idea of Labamu came up. We started Labamu with the idea of just working on a bank. Okay, let's work on lending money, right? That was the initial value proposition of Labamu when we started off the idea as such: do micro lending, do P2P lending, and grow to any startup. But when we actually went to the markets and we actually did our first set of prototyping and whatnot, we realized that if we actually solve the basic crux and problems of these SMEs, they may not need financing overall. Of course, to grow, but not to the day-to-day management of their operations. So if you see,
what were these initial problems that you were solving?
So today, if you see, let's say, a small mom and pop shop, right? Majority of them, none of their processes are automated, right? So in terms of their inventory and catalog, right? They still do not know what's sitting in their books and shops in a warehouse. Right?
Yeah.
A daily wage worker, like runs out of cart or something as well. It still needs whatever it earns today. It could use that money to buy its produce or whatever else to make its goods to be sold the next day, like a small coffee shop, right?
Yeah.
Like a cafe. Only if it buys the coffee and milk and the other things, the milk and sugar as well for today, it can sell and do something for tomorrow, right? So they cannot grow. And then they kind of wait for the actual money to come back to in. So the receivables as well, if you decide, for them to actually grow themselves and manage themselves. And there is no way that they can show that they have done this kind of a business, because none of them is digital. They literally use cash in, cash
all
out.
Cash, and they're not keeping records. Just kind of day-to-day inventory management. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
And so in order for that's really where we kind of started off the concept of Labamu. Saying, hey, what if we actually become a part of their day-to-day life? See, normally if you go to a bank or any other NBFC for a loan, maybe once in 3 months, 6 months, right? But if you make your platform sticky, that you become a part of their integral core, right? That's exactly where the value addition comes in, and that's exactly when you get the insights and whatnot. And that's how the concept of Labamu basically kind of completely pivoted from a pure lending platform to a pure operational and sales enablement platform.
So now you do both, or you're just the operations?
Now we do both.
Nice.
So that's okay. So now we do both. So now we've kind of pivoted from just a pure financing kind of a thing to servicing the entire spectrum of the SMEs as well. So what we do is literally we help manage their cash flows, their inventory, their customers, and while, like I said, banking at the core of it, we've tightly coupled the financial services as a part of the core platform offering.
Nice. Yeah, I love this stuff. Would you say that there's been a term that has become popular over the last maybe 10 years, and it's called microfinance. Would you say this kind of fits in that category, or?
Well, that's the end leg of our journey.
Perfect. Okay.
Right. So the way we would operate, and let me give you a small example. Right. So let's say we small mom and pop shops to a mid-tier big business or a company of about 10, 15, 20 employees to a retail chain or a multi-facet, multi-country outlet or a brand as well. So let's say someone to how do you say it in Singapore terms or Indonesia, small old chunky brands to a Starbucks as well. We can now hopefully soon cater to them as well. To a big mall like Walmart to the US as well. Maybe not to that fully ERP, but yeah, that's how we've kind of transitioned the platform as a whole to this.
I love it, man. You got a huge market of 40% in most of these developing nations. That's not small at all. But Tell me where you're at right now, like how many small businesses you're helping, and where would you like to take this over the next few years? What's the plan?
Yeah, so we launched Labamu sometime in mid to end of 2023, and now we have over 100,000 active users on the platform.
Dang. Are they all in Singapore or?
All in Indonesia. Today, the startup is based in Indonesia. We picked Indonesia as a beachhead market, right? So that was our first beachhead country. We are planning for our Singapore launch sometime in the second half of the year as well. Obviously, since we are kind of backed by a bank and a majority shareholder or a part shareholder being Standard Chartered Bank, we do follow all the policies and the guidelines compliance as well of the bank as well, right? So we still KYC every single customer. So we've kind of, it's a fairly, while it seems a very simple tech platform to use from a usability standpoint of view, the actual deep end functionality, sanctions trading, compliance training as well, is baked into the platform as well. Where do we see ourselves going? Obviously, we started the journey with a lot of very, very small sort of micro segment customer base as well. And we're now moving to the upper and middle tier, so middle and upper tier of the customer as well. So we now have started working with let's say, medium to small companies manage their entire portfolio. So when I say portfolio, it's like their entire inventory management, product catalog, to the entire billing, sales, their the entire omni-channel and the e-commerce as well is in Labamu.
Nice.
So it's like a one-stop shop for any single business as well. Yeah, that's where we see us growing. And what we've also started is working alongside the grassroots and the local municipalities and the government within Indonesia, the suburbs and their things. How do we help all these merchants grow?
Tell me why Indonesia? What was the reasoning behind them being your beachhead market?
Yeah, so when we did our groundwork in terms of, so we started off with 4 countries as our pilot research to launch Labamu: Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand. So we did kind of a research around as to how many SMEs are there in general. So like I said, since our plan was a pure funding or invoicing and microfinancing. So if you see, Indonesia is the largest South Asian country with a financing gap. It's got a good $300 to $400 billion financing gap. And it has the largest number of SMEs in pretty much the entire South Asia. It's got almost 63 million SMEs. So,
when you say financing gap, you mean number of businesses that need financing?
So that's 63 million people or mid to small companies operate in Indonesia. 63 million. That's a huge number. And the financing gap is like the amount of money that they need to run, let's say, their operating capital, working capital as well.
Gotcha.
So we looked at all different countries. Obviously, Singapore was there, as a very small market. Of course, it did have the bandwidth of launching as well. It was already a tech-ready platform. But from a market standpoint or a growth standpoint point of view, it was limited in terms of what it could do. I mean, Singapore has about 200,000, 300,000 SMEs. This has 63 million. You can see this here, right? Obviously, and surprisingly so, majority of these SMEs in Indonesia are women. So surprisingly, yes. So Indonesia, despite of being like a Muslim country, there's actually most of the businesses are actually women-led. And 70 to 80% of these women do not have access to capital.
Yeah.
Right? So today, if they need a loan from the bank, they still need to get an approval from their husband or father or whatever. They need to get a right of sign off. So that's exactly why banks even don't serve them. That's exactly where we saw this huge gap of how the microfinancing would work at that point of time. And we decided, okay, let's launch, find a team in Indonesia and build them up. That's why our tagline is more Bahasa specific today. Tumbuh bersama.
I love it, man. I never would have guessed, that the majority were women, and there's so much when it comes to crossing borders and doing business in these places beyond just the numbers. Especially when you add in like the cultural aspect of they need to get their husband or their father's approval to get these loans, and that's another barrier that you have to overcome. But love that you guys are helping them and building their businesses. But don't want to take up your whole day, but I got one last question I want to give, and specifically because you work with small businesses, I think I'd like to hear your answer on this. As I work with a bunch of students and very early stage founders. If you had to give one piece of advice, and if you happen to have any specific financial advice, what would you give to these early stage founders?
I think since I started, I'll just put that way. So I worked with Nike, right, as about my career. And I did like their tagline, just do it. So I think that has kind of stuck on to me for many years, right? So at least give it a shot. You never know what idea clicks at what point of time. And even if it's an idea, how does that shroom out to something big, something different over the course of year as well, right? So give it a shot, give it a try, never give up, right? It always helps. It always helps. Like I said, I've done 5 different startups before this, all failures. It's, at least I tried it out there before being lucky enough to be a part of this CVC and Labamu as a whole and the entire journey. So yeah, that's I would say. Just keep trying. And the other thing is always focus on your core team. Yeah. That's the second thing I'll say. So find the right set of people with whom you can work with. That's what matters the most. Finding the right team. What the idea comes and how it changes, I think it's all a journey. You never know what you actually want to build and what you actually end up building eventually.
Perfect. I love, man. I tell my students, what is it? Building a startup is like dating. Like, you don't have to win every time. You just need to be right once. So, yeah. And they're a bunch of great students. But thank you so much for your time today, man. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you grow and continue to expand. And here to help any way I can. So, pleasure.
Cool. Appreciate it, Brad. Thanks for giving us time.